Roman Triumph released in early access on the 3rd of April 2025 with overwhelmingly positive reviews. We're talking 97% positive at the time I'm recording. I think it will probably go down as the game, gets a bit more known, because now I think it's more a lot of the people that already knew about it that have it so far. But you can see that this is an amazing game. And it is early access, so it will get even better. If you have feedback, there is a chance for them to work on that feedback. This is a survival city builder set in the Roman Empire, and it has a ton of things. I have done already a quick let's play of it, so don't hesitate to check in the video description below if you want to see it. But today, this is my top 10 tips to help you thrive and survive, because remember, this is a survival game in this game. So let's dive in with tip number 1, the maintenance. This is also one thing that sort of set this game apart from many other city builder. There is a maintenance to pretty much everything in the game. So this is not just about, getting some wood to be able to build a new building. You actually need wood every single month of the game, every single year, because you have maintenance of your building. Your houses, for example, right? If we look at this hospitium, which is a medium house, it requires 1 wood and 2 bricks per month for upkeep. And if you don't do this, the house will go down, right? It will start not providing comfort to your people, and it will start, being destroyed. And this is not just for your houses. Most building, for example, this is a cabbage farm, also has a monthly upkeep of 2 bricks. Or if I look at this temple here, 7 stone, 3 bricks, and 3 golds. So these actually are the key resources that usually you need in terms of maintenance. You're gonna need some wood, you're gonna need some stone, you're gonna need some bricks, you're gonna need some gold, and then the final one is iron. Late in the game, you will also probably need some cloth, but this is really late in the game. Then in terms of the resources that are over here, there is also the clay. Clay is needed, to make some bricks. Here we have some weapons, here some tools, and there's a couple of other resources, but these are really the key ones. Still linked to the maintenance, one thing I do want to mention is many buildings can be upgraded. Look at this wood archer tower, for example, over here, you see the sign on top. This is the upgrade sign. I've done one of these upgrades, the sharp stone arrows. There is then 2 other upgrades here that are blocked, and then there is a final one that is unlocked, but I haven't done, the brick tower. And you can see the cost over here, right? 10 stone, 40 bricks. But what's important here is that some upgrades will cost some more maintenance, will increase your maintenance, versus other upgrade will not increase your maintenance. So if you look at this one, for example, right, it says change in current upkeep, plus 1 wood, plus 2 stone. So not so great, right? Like you need to make sure you have enough wood and stone production before you do this upgrade. Versus if you look at this wood wall, I can upgrade it into a brick wall. Of course, it's gonna cost me some resource to upgrade it, but the maintenance is not gonna increase. So keep that in mind. Again, some buildings, you can upgrade them and you won't have an upgrade in maintenance, other it will upgrade your maintenance. And then last but not least, because of this, it is a game where you will definitely need to scale more and more your production. Don't think you will need only 1 brickworks. I have already 2 brickworks over here, and they're actually both of them upgraded. Otherwise, I couldn't even keep up with just the maintenance of my, buildings, let alone build new things. Tip number 2, and again, this is something that sets this game apart from some, we have the job priorities here, where by pressing tab, right, you can show or hide all of your workers and where are they working. And you can decide the priorities. You can decide also more things. So what do I mean by this? Basically, let's assume you only have 2 people, well, they're going to be builders. Let's assume I have, where I have only 10 people. I'm gonna have 2 that are gonna be builders, and I'm gonna have 8 that are gonna be archers. But then nobody will work on anything else. Right now, I'm in a space that is really good because I have people that are doing nothing, right? They're unemployed. So all of my jobs are, covered, but the reality is most of the time you will see, because it is a survival game, you will not have enough people to do everything. So you'll have to juggle, and you'll have to, for example, move, okay, research is important right now, let's move it up. In my opinion, what you're gonna want is probably to have your food at the top, right? You're gonna want also things that are linked to maintenance, like especially your bricks or your stone to be a bit high, because otherwise you'll get low. And then you're gonna put things like the money, your priest, etc., and things that are maybe less critical to work 100% of the year, like your research, a bit lower, right? Also, what I suggest is your town guards and your archers and scorpion operators, you put them at the lowest unless you're being attacked. When you're being attacked, you move them up right away, but the rest of the time you can put them lower, right? So that is the basic of it, but it's just the basic. You can do a lot more. You can, for example, put a limit So I can say, you know, farmer is important, yes, but I want to only have 10 farmers max, not more, right? I think it is usually important to do this on the builders. At the beginning of the game, you have a lot of things you want to build, but maybe not that many builders. So to avoid, you know, everything stopping when you want to build something, you can put a limit on the builder. And yeah, that's pretty much it, ladies and gents. You can really do a lot here, so I like it. You can also click here to click exactly on where is that builder, who that builder is, and then see their details. So great quality, and you'll see this is across the whole game. While maybe the graphic and the UI may not feel like the most you know, advanced one, the most fancy one, the UX, the user experience, in my opinion, is really on point. Tip number 3, let's talk about food. Like most games, you know, you don't have food, it's a big problem. Your population is going to die, right? There's going to be a famine, so you want to avoid this. But the tip here is you want to make sure that you create, you know, a production of food that is higher than your consumption, because in winter, your farms are going to stop working. Right? Or not stop working, they're going to work a bit, but you know, your production will decrease by a lot. So during the other seasons, you need to make sure that you have a lot more, and that you also store. So create a couple of food storages, right? So that you can store for winter. The other tip here is, you know, the more food types, the more happiness your people will get over here. So this is important to try to have different food types, at least at the beginning, to have wheat and cabbage. I think that is pretty easy. But in the future, there's also other types that you want to try to get. And then last but not least, there is actually a secret bonus for your farms if you give them water. So you can see over here, this wheat farm has actually test water. So the fertility is 108%. And by the way, do try to make sure that your farms are on fertile land, which is green over here, right? You can see it's 110%. Versus this land here is only 80%, so definitely not that great. And here it's probably in the middle, around 100. Make sure that you're on fertile land and you get, you know, something pretty good like 100%. But then you can also get plus 25% if you have water supplied by the reservoir. The reservoir being over here, and you can see it is in range. There's this small arrow for those farms, but not these ones. If you look over here, these ones, they don't have that bonus. So do make sure that you give them water. And so next, let's speak about water actually. All right, tip number 4, water. Water is quite critical. You're gonna need to unlock it into this one, the industry tab, the aqueduct. The aqueduct here will give you access to the aqueduct, the Noria, and the reservoir. And the way it works, and by the way, you can see here one thing I mentioned before, I have a problem. My production of wood is 59, my consumption is 70. I have a deficit, and there's a couple of buildings that are not being maintained properly yet. And so they're getting, you know, into trouble if that happens for a long time. So what we're gonna do is make sure to cut a few more woodcutters. I only have one forester, and clearly that's not enough. We're gonna need another forester. Oh, there is a Draco that's going to attack us. He can fly over the walls. Yeah, by the way, you know, again, this is your first time watching this game. There is indeed mythical creatures like hydras and dragon that can attack you, but there is also a mode where you can have only normal, you know, barbarians to fight your Roman legions. Love it. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, for the water, you know, you're going to need 3 things. You're going to need a Nuria. This one needs to be placed on the water, basically. So over here, that's fine. Then you're going to need an aqueduct, right? This is this one over here. And you're going to need one or several reservoirs. These reservoirs, they have a range, pretty big as you can see, but I probably need to put a second one later on somewhere over here. That is going to then provide bonuses for many things. It's going to provide bonuses to your farms, as we just mentioned. It's also going to produce a health bonus for your houses or the residents that are in those houses, right? It's also going to produce a lower chance of fires in this range, which is quite important. And last but not least, it will also kind of enable certain buildings to work. For example, the bathhouse will need some water, that makes sense. Or some of those decorations, like this decoration here, it's a fountain. It only works if it has access to water. So don't build it before you have water, but as soon as you have water, try to cover, you know, as much as possible of your city. Try to also maybe think about this in advance, right? Leave a space for an aqueduct in your city. Otherwise, you may have problems there. Tip number 5, let's talk about money. Well, money is critical, right? Like everything in life. So you're going to need to go into house and monuments over here, and you have the taxes one. This will unlock the treasury. Then you build the treasury. There's this building over here. You're going to need 4 people to work there. And with this, you'll be able to choose your tax rate. The higher tax rate, you know, the more money you make. The lower the tax rate, the more people are happy. Or the higher the tax rate, the more you're going to get a debuff of your happiness. As you can see over here, with 2.5% of taxes, I'm getting minus 12 of debuff. They also do suggest that, in Roman times, it was between 1 and 3%. So this is a bit to keep that in mind. And last but not least, they help you to calculate the taxes here. And they say that one domus, it's a small house, gives you 1 gold. The hospitium gives you 3 gold. So that is also why it's better to get more hospitium than more domus. A large hospitium is 7, a luxury domus is 3, and a villa is 15. And then you're going to consume, of course, this gold on a couple of things, right? Some will be in buildings. For example, this temple here, this temple is 3 gold, right? And there's a few other buildings that cost gold to maintain. But more importantly, you're going to need gold for pretty much every single research. There's a few that you don't, but these are really the first few. For most of the research after, you're going to need gold. And for some of them, you're going to need quite a lot of gold. If you look over here, we're talking about 350, 450, 350, right? So you're going to want to get gold, which means you're going to want to put your taxes as high as you can while not having your happiness too low, which means next tip, we should talk about how to get happiness high. So tip number 6, let's talk a bit more about happiness, because it's actually a bit more complex than in most games. As with many games, of course, you want high happiness for good immigration rates and also to make sure that your people don't leave. And lastly, as I said, high happiness will enable you to have high taxes without those problems. It is also impacting something else. It is impacting your productivity. At the bottom there, you can see productivity between 70% and 125%, basically based on your happiness. Right now, my productivity is 91%, so it's not bad. It's not the maximum, but it's not bad. So the higher your happiness, also the higher the productivity. And it becomes a virtuous cycle, right? So that's quite good there. But as I said, it's a bit more complex than usual because you have actually kind of 5 types of happiness, and then they have different weights to get into one number. And then you're going to take debuffs, some buffs sometimes, and your tax maluses. So yes, what are those 5 things? The first one is health with a 30% weight, then comfort, 20% weight, culture, 15% weight, recreation, 15% weight, and lastly, safety, 15% weight. So you take all of those numbers and then, with the weight and the debuff, you get into this 51 number that you see here, which is your total happiness. In terms of the debuff or buffs, these come usually from different events. For example, here you can see, because there were some crimes, I have for 5 months -8 in happiness. Or you can get, the gods that gives you a bonus, and then you have a buff. The tax, as I mentioned, is really linked to the percentage of tax. And all of the other numbers are going to come from a lot of places. So let's take this house, for example. It's going to give me some comfort. There is some base comfort, and there's also an additional comfort that comes from the furniture over here. Then if I do this one, it will give me even more comfort. Then you have, decorations. This decoration here, a column of triumph, is giving me culture and safety. Then you're going to have something like the town guard, that's providing safety. On the other hand, something like the forum is culture and comfort. And it continues very pretty much everything that you have, especially over here into the services, will give you different things. Right? The arena is culture and recreation, the hospital is health, etc., etc. So it's definitely not that easy because first of all, obviously, all of those buildings will cost different amount of resource, also different amount of maintenance. They will all bring different amounts, like this one is 10 culture and 20 recreation versus the town guard is 40 of safety, right? And then there is the weight, where the health or the comfort is a lot higher than the culture, recreation, or safety. So you need to keep all of these in mind to then get, the right things. So unfortunately, in my opinion, there is not a perfect way. I mean, if there was a perfect way, everybody would do this. You do need to kind of mix and match a bit. And in particular, I think it is very much linked to what resources you have. If you have a lot of fertile land and you can make a lot of foods, then, a tavern is obviously great because you're going to use 25 of food, no problem. On the other hand, if you have a lot of stone in your city, a forum is great, right? Because it just costs stone to support. And on top of this, the effect of this one is very big. So it, again, depends a bit on your map, on what you have at that time, but I do want you to keep in mind the weight, where I try to focus on the comfort and the health first, get them to a high level, like I've done here, right? 89% for health, 97% for comfort, before you spend too much on culture, recreation, and safety, because you're basically getting half the points, right? Versus health. Tip number 7. We talked about research before, right? I showed you that you need, for example, the houses, the taxes one for treasury, or you need in the industry, the aqueduct for the water. And it's pretty much the case, obviously, for everything, right? You're going to need both for the upgrades. This is an upgrade to your bricks. This is an upgrade to a quarry, but also for new production like iron over here, or for food, right? Even the cabbage farming, you need to unlock. So research is quite important. I did mention that you're going to need, some costs. You're going to need to pay, for example, food and gold are the main ones. there is also sometimes some requirements. So that's important to look at them in advance before you think about, a certain investment. In particular, in the defense one, you will see a brick tower as a requirement, for example, of 4 wooden tower. Or a ballista, you need 2 scorpions and 2 blacksmiths. So there's no point in, trying to get the gold until you have those things. But the key tip here that I wanted to share is that, while you need 1 academia, this is over here, you need 1 academia to be able to start researching. You don't have to stop with 1. Like I did here, I have a second one, and you can have a third, a fourth, etc. Why would we want to do this? Well, the more you have, the more the research is going to be fast. Instead of, let's say 2 months, if you have 2, it's going to take 1 month. Instead of 5 months, 2.5 months, right, etc., etc. The only thing, of course, is that it will increase your upkeep and also the number of researchers. So this is why, for example, this one here right now is paused. I haven't put it as active. But yeah, if you need to advance into your research, create a couple of different academia, and that will help you. I still have a few important tips for you all, but before we move forward, please spend 5 seconds to smash the like button below. Don't worry, I'll wait. Have you done it? Not yet? Come on, what are you waiting for? Okay, let's move on. Speaking about many of these buildings and the complexity, there is an added complexity that some buildings have a range. Like I showed you, this building here has a green range. Some buildings actually have a red range, like this one. And some buildings don't have a range, but they have something different, which is they're limited to a number of citizens. So let's talk about those differences, and I will give you a couple of tips. As I said, there is basically a big difference between buildings that have a range, and you'll see it here, it says 22 cells, and even when you're going to want to build it, right, it tells you over here 22 cells in the description, versus those buildings that have a number of citizens, like the town guard is 60 citizens, the tavern is 9 cells, the hospital is 150 citizens, etc. So, like the name suggests, the hospital or the town guard, it's going to give me the effect of plus 40 of safety, but only for 60 citizens. So if you have 120 citizens, you need 2 town guards to get this plus 40. Otherwise, let's assume you have, 120 citizens, but you only have 1 town guard, you're only going to get 40 of safety. On the other hand, for the forum, right, you're going to get 10 culture and 15 of comfort for all of the buildings that are in this range. And again, sometimes it's a very big range, like this one over here, versus sometimes it's a small range, like this tavern, 9 cells. And sometimes it's even less, like this one is 5 cells. And this one is red instead of green, because instead of a positive one, it is a negative one, right? It's a negative one in terms of comfort, but it only affects the residents, right? So as long as you don't have any houses there, the comfort here in terms of happiness is not gonna go down. It's only if you put these buildings that are red, which are usually on, your production, if you put them close to these guys, then they're not gonna be happy. So for example, this one over here, I'm pretty sure is impacted. Yeah, you can see this one only has 75 of comfort because it's impacted by this quarry, while the one next door has 114 of comfort. So a lot higher, just because of this negative building. So do keep that in mind, put your production away, right, as far as possible, and also try to maximize the layout of your buildings, your services, also your decorations, because they have a range, right? So this is where having an efficient layout will be critical. On the other hand, the buildings that don't need to be in range, put them as far as possible, right? This one, let's put it over here, it's fine. It's 60 citizens, but it's far. So there's no need to put it close. Similarly for this hospital, right? No need to put it next to the houses because it's just taken a number of citizens. So I hope that was useful, the difference between the two and what it means for you. Tip number 9, your armies. Well, we have over here the army tab with 9 different troops. And this is not the only troop, but these are your infantry, right? In terms of infantry, you're going to have 3 types. We have over here the gladius, we have then the pilum, and we have the archer. And these are tier 1. Then you're going to have the same one for tier 2, right, over here, and same for tier 3. So obviously, the higher the level, the more they are going to cost, both in terms of the monthly cost, right? If you look at this one, monthly cost is just 4 food. This one is 4 food and 1 gold, but also for the cost actually to build them. But of course, this will give you higher and stronger people, right? This level 1 gladius has a health of 40 and a damage of 4. This level 2 has a health of 60 and a damage of 6, right? So the more money you have, the more resources you have, the more you can go to tier 2 and then tier 3. You do need, by the way, to unlock these ones. Tier 2 is over here, tier 3 is over there. So that's something to keep in mind. And each of those troops, they have kind of different strengths, right? It's not just the damage. This one is very strong for melee combat, right? But cannot fight the creatures. Versus this one over here is pretty good at throwing spears, so that's fine for creatures, but it's not so good for melee. And then last but not least, we have the archers, right? That is your range unit. So it has a low health, but it can attack from far, even the monster. And remember, as I said, this is not the only troops we have. There's some others, but I did want to talk about these ones first, as this is what you're gonna start with. Now, when you select all of those troops, you can create different groups. For example, I can create Shift 1. This is my whole group, right? So if I click on one, they're all selected. Then you can easily filter. Let's assume I want to take all of my archers away. You click on archer there, you put them away, and then I can say Shift 2 for the archers. You have also a couple of different formations, right? You can see this formation, etc. So you can play with this, right? It's maybe not the most advanced. You can also, by the way, if you press your right click, you can move the troops, right, to change the formation. So again, maybe not the most advanced RTS that you've ever seen, but I feel like it is pretty good. There's enough. But as I said, this is not your only troops. You're also going to have access to defenses in terms of walls and gates, but also in terms of offensive other troops. One is the archer towers. You have the wooden one, the brick one over here, and the high guard towers. They will basically have an archer on them without having to make one. So this is, in some ways similar to the archer that you have over here, but in other ways very different, because basically, it's stuck in one place. It's not the same also of damage and health, etc. You have different improvement for it, but that's your next type of troops. And then you're also going to have some siege equipment, the Scorpion and the Ballista. The Scorpion is this one over here. And then you have the Ballista. I actually haven't made one, but you get the gist, right? These are more anti-personal weapons that are really good against the beast and maybe a bit less against the soldiers. They can still attack the soldiers, but they're not that great for the soldiers. Now, those siege equipment you have to put on the wall, like I did over here. But the key tip over here too, by the way, is you don't have to put it on the big wall like this. You can also just do this, put one wall like this, and put your spear on it, your Scorpion on it, or your Ballista. It will work. Even just one defense like this will be enough, no problem. I do also want to remind you that, for the towers, you can upgrade or you can build directly. So for example, this wooden archer tower here, I can upgrade it into a brick tower, but you can also just go over here and create a brick tower directly. And then last but not least, a very important thing to know is that your cast room over here, it also has some defenses. It can basically attack enemies that come into this red circle over here with 4 damage per shot, a reload of 0.3 seconds, etc. So you can see that this is basically a gigantic tower, even if there's no soldier in it, etc. And then last but not least, tip number 10, our seating organization is obviously very important. I already mentioned the positive versus negative impact, in particular on your residents, where the green, all of the green things you want to put over here close to the residents, and the red one you want to put as far as possible. But that's not the only one, right? You have also the water. We mentioned that the water, you need water for your people, but you also need water for your farms, and actually having water to cover everything is good to reduce fire. So if you take those two first together, you'll definitely want to have your houses on one side of your city, your industries on the other, and maybe the farm actually in the middle, so that you can have the reservoir connecting. But of course, you need to add the complexity of the fertility. So you want to have all of your farms in a fertile land. And last but not least, you're going to have to have wood, not just to cut, but also for hunting, right? If you're hunting hut and other hunting has a lot of trees like this one, the efficiency is going to be high, versus if there's no more trees, if you put one, I don't know, in the middle of nowhere with no trees, the fertility or efficiency is going to be very low. So you definitely need to keep all of this in mind. The good thing is you have the forester, so you're going to be able to replant trees if you want later on, but do keep that in mind, especially when you start putting your first cast room, right, to the center of your city. You're going to want, again, one side for your population, one side for your industry. So look also where, the actual deposits of the large stone deposits are, and also iron. I actually have one over here. So you don't choose this, but look a bit where they are so that you can organize your city with all of the people on one side, your industries on another, and the farm on high fertility. And that's 10. Any other tips you want to share with the community? Don't hesitate to share in the comments below. And if you want to see more of this game, don't hesitate to click on my Let's Play video on the screen now. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.